Every single second, across almost every country on Earth, someone cracks open a slim, silver and blue can of Red Bull. Over 12 billion cans are sold every single year, generating billions of dollars in revenue. But behind that global beverage empire lies a bizarre, counterintuitive reality that the company rarely advertises. Red Bull does not care about the drink. If you look beneath the surface of their balance sheets, Red Bull is not actually a beverage company at all. They do not own factories to brew the liquid. They do not own the massive fleet of trucks that distribute it across the globe. They outsource the physical product entirely to third parties. Instead, Red Bull built a world-class, multi-billion-dollar media and sports juggernaut that happens to sell a canned caffeine syrup as a high-margin souvenir. This is the unbelievable story of how an Austrian marketing executive took a cheap Asian tonic, flipped traditional advertising completely on its head, and built an empire out of thin air. To understand how a company can sell billions of dollars of a product they barely touch, we have to travel back to 1982. An Austrian marketing manager named Dietrich Mateschitz was traveling on business through Southeast Asia. Exhausted from endless flights and suffering from severe jet lag, he walked into a local pharmacy in Thailand looking for something to wake him up. He bought a small, cheap, medicinal glass bottle called Krating Dang. In Thailand, Krating Dang was a non-carbonated tonic marketed almost exclusively to low-income blue-collar workers, long-haul truck drivers, and overnight laborers who needed cheap stamina to survive brutal shifts. Dietrich drank the syrup, and within minutes, his exhaustion vanished. He felt completely energized. Right there, sitting in a Bangkok hotel room, Dietrich had a moment of pure entrepreneurial clarity. He realized that while energy syrups were common across Asia, the Western world had no equivalent product category whatsoever. In Europe and the United States, soft drinks were all about sweet refreshment. Nobody was selling functional energy. Dietrich tracked down the creator of the tonic, a self-made Thai entrepreneur named Chalio Yuvidhia. The two men struck a 50-50 partnership deal. They each invested $500,000 of their own money, agreed to carbonate the liquid, adapted the flavors slightly for Western palates, and translated the name from Thai into English, Red Bull. When Dietrich brought the drink back to Europe to launch it, he was met with immediate, crushing failure. First, government regulators in Austria and Germany refused to grant him a sales license for nearly 3 years, claiming that high doses of caffeine combined with taurine were dangerous for public consumption. While Dietrich fought bureaucratic battles in court, he hired professional market research agencies to conduct consumer taste tests across Europe. The test results were an absolute catastrophe. Participants universally hated the drink. Focus groups reported that the liquid smelled like medicine, tasted far too artificial, and left a strange aftertaste. Market analysts delivered a grim, unanimous verdict. No consumer in the Western world would ever pay money to drink this, and the company would go bankrupt in less than 6 months. To make matters worse, traditional soft drink marketing was insanely expensive. Established giants like Coca-Cola and Pepsi dominated the market by spending tens of millions of dollars on television commercials, sports sponsorships, and billboard campaigns to secure prime supermarket shelf space. Dietrich didn't have tens of millions of dollars. He was sitting on a product that consumers claimed to hate, facing corporate beverage giants with endless advertising budgets. Most entrepreneurs would have cut their losses and walked away. Dietrich decided to make one of the most radical business pivots in modern history. He realized that if he tried to sell Red Bull as a regular soda next to Coke on supermarket shelves, he would lose every single time. So he stopped treating Red Bull like a soda. He decided to turn it into a high-priced, exclusive, almost mystical performance fuel. Instead of lowering the price to compete with cheap soda cans, Dietrich did the opposite. He slapped a premium price tag on Red Bull, charging more than double the price of a standard can of Coca-Cola. He reasoned that if people were going to drink something that tasted like medicine, they had to believe it was potent, expensive, and valuable. Then came the legendary guerrilla marketing offensive. Since he couldn't afford television ads, Dietrich bypassed traditional retailers entirely and targeted the two demographic groups who were constantly exhausted: university students pulling all-nighters and late-night clubbers partying until dawn. He hired charismatic, popular college students as student brand managers, loaded their dorm rooms with free cases of Red Bull, and paid them to throw massive campus parties. He customized fleets of small Mini Cooper cars, mounted giant aluminum Red Bull cans on the roofs, and had drivers distribute free cold cans directly to exhausted workers, athletes, and students on city streets. In European nightclubs, Red Bull pulled off brilliant psychological warfare. Dietrich paid venue bartenders to stock Red Bull behind the bar and combine it with alcohol, creating the iconic vodka Red Bull cocktail. He even paid club cleanup crews to scatter empty Red Bull cans on dance floors and in trash bins outside popular venues. When young partygoers walked into clubs, they saw empty cans everywhere and subconsciously concluded that Red Bull was the hottest, most popular drink in the building. The illusion worked like magic. Demand exploded across Europe. Word-of-mouth curiosity spread like wildfire, and soon, Red Bull became a rebellious status symbol. Yet, as the cash began pouring in, Dietrich made a decision that separated Red Bull from every other consumer product on Earth. When traditional beverage companies make profits, they reinvest their capital into buying bottling plants, expanding delivery fleets, and securing massive warehousing infrastructure. That physical overhead ties up enormous amounts of capital and drops operating margins down to slim single digits. Red Bull chose the exact opposite route. Dietrich outsourced the entire manufacturing, canning, and packaging operation to a third-party Austrian bottling specialist called Rauch. Red Bull did not own the factories, they did not own the machinery, and they did not manage the supply trucks. By eliminating factory overhead, Red Bull achieved software-level gross margins on a physical commodity. The raw cost to produce a can, the water, sugar, caffeine, and aluminum, was only a few pennies per unit. But because consumers were paying $3 to $4 at retail, Red Bull was sitting on an absolute goldmine of cash. Instead of pocketing that profit, Dietrich channeled over 30% of the company's total annual revenue directly back into one single engine: extreme marketing. In the 1990s, when corporate sponsors backed sporting events, they followed a predictable playbook: pay a fee to slap a tiny logo onto an athlete's jersey or a stadium banner. Dietrich recognized that this model was fundamentally broken. When you rent a logo space on someone else's team, you don't control the narrative, you don't own the broadcast rights, and the moment the match ends, your brand disappears. Red Bull decided to stop sponsoring events. They decided to own the events entirely. They hunted down extreme, high-adrenaline subcultures that traditional corporate brands considered too dangerous and uninsurable. They funded cliff divers plunging off 80-foot cliffs into open oceans, downhill mountain bikers racing down vertical cliffs at Red Bull Rampage, aerobata pilots flying obstacle courses at the Red Bull Air Race, and freestyle motocross riders performing backflips across city canyons. To capture this action, they launched Red Bull Media House, a multi-million-dollar production powerhouse with dedicated camera crews, stunt coordinators, and world-class video editors. Red Bull wasn't making commercials anymore. They were producing high-octane Hollywood-level documentaries and viral clips that millions of people searched for and watched voluntarily. From extreme subcultures, Red Bull made the leap into mainstream global athletics. They purchased 2 Formula One teams, establishing Red Bull Racing and building cutting-edge engineering facilities that defeated automotive giants like Ferrari, McLaren, and Mercedes to win multiple world championships. They bought football clubs across Germany, Austria, Brazil, and the United States, building a unified sports empire from the ground up. The absolute masterstroke of this media empire arrived on October 14, 2012, with the historic Red Bull Stratos mission. Red Bull spent an estimated $30 million to fund Austrian skydiver Felix Baumgartner. They lifted him inside a specialized capsule attached to a giant helium balloon to the edge of space, over 24 miles above the Earth, and broadcasted live as he stepped out into the void, breaking the sound barrier in a death-defying freefall back to the planet. Over 8 million people watched the jump live on YouTube, setting an all-time global internet broadcast record. The Red Bull logo was stamped across the capsule, the spacesuit, and every second of global television news coverage that followed. If Red Bull had attempted to buy that volume of global television advertising airtime, it would have cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Instead, they produced the event themselves, licensed the broadcasting footage to television networks worldwide, and generated billions of dollars in free brand prestige. That is the genius behind the Red Bull financial machine. While other beverage companies compete on sugar formulas and retail distribution battles, Red Bull built a brand identity so synonymous with peak human performance and adventure that consumers gladly pay luxury prices for carbonated water. Dietrich Mateschitz didn't build a soda company. He built a world-class sports and media empire that uses a high-margin caffeine drink as its primary financial fuel. The story of Red Bull is one of the most powerful case studies in modern business history. You do not need to invent a complex physical product to conquer the world. Sometimes, the greatest asset an enterprise can own is not the factory, but the story. When you control the culture and capture the imagination of your audience, a few cents of water and sugar can build a multi-billion-dollar dynasty. If Red Bull had listened to those initial focus groups in 1984 and changed their recipe to taste like regular soda, would they still dominate the global market today? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for more deep dives into the hidden strategies behind the biggest fortunes in business history.